Hey everyone, in this video we're going to talk about connecting Next.js with n8n actually. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen n8n around, and maybe you've even wondered if you can use that as sort of a backend platform for your app. And I actually think it is possible, and in this video I want to show you some of the ways that you can approach it. Now, if you're not familiar with n8n yet, basically it's a tool that you can use to create some pretty sophisticated workflows, and you can do a lot of things without even coding. It's basically a click and point interface here where you can connect nodes, as they call it. So you can have, for example, a node that pings you on Slack, for example. So if you're building an app where you want to be pinged when something happens, maybe somebody submitted a form, you want to be notified on Slack. Yes, technically you could code that up yourself, but actually you may prefer using n8n for that. So we're going to see how we can connect that here with a Next.js application. Now I created a very quick, simple Next.js app. You can ignore some of the things here. Basically, it just allows the user to upload a CSV file and it will be converted into JSON. So that functionality of converting the CSV file into JSON is actually done with n8n here in this app. So I selected a CSV file from my computer here, and now I'm going to upload this and it's going to upload, and the actual functionality now will come from n8n. n8n will actually return a response, and now I have that CSV file. I'm getting that back here as JSON. So yes, technically we could achieve the same by coding this up. Maybe you're using some package, but actually, you know, there are some really interesting use cases, I think, for using Next.js or React as like your front end and n8n as your back end. Of course, you do need to take a look at the license that n8n has. So let's actually see how I was able to do this. In fact, I even got this working on a VPS. So I'm hosting both the Next.js application as well as the n8n instance on a VPS, and I'm doing that with Coolify. Actually, I'll show you how to set that up as well. But let's actually start from scratch here and see how we can do this locally on our own computer first. All right, so just to show you how I set this up locally. So it's just a Next.js application here that I created, and we can run this just like we are used to. So I can just run npm run dev, and then we can open that up on localhost 3000. Let me click this away. So here it's just one page. I actually just changed the default boilerplate a little bit. I actually forgot to remove this. I just added some text here. This is an input field, so if the user clicks on it, their OS level file picker pops up and they can pick a file, and it will show the file name here. So if you're familiar with Next.js, of course, this looks familiar. So now let's actually take a look at what happens when the user submits the form, right? So here that we have that home page, and we just have one upload form component. This is where all the action happens. So here the form, when it is submitted, we are handling that with this function here, grab the information from the form. In this case, it's going to be a file, and we're going to send that back to our own API route handler first. In Next.js, we can create API endpoints. So I created this one here. Right, so at this point, we're still in the browsers. Now we could actually submit it directly from the browser to n8n. You may have to deal with CORS, but in this case, I'm submitting it to my own API endpoint in my Next.js application first. From this point is where we want to send it to n8n for processing. Let's take a look. What I'm doing here is ultimately I'm going to make a fetch call here to the n8n instance. And actually, I don't know why it says runtime edge here. We don't need to do that. So here we are making that request to the n8n instance, and it will eventually give us a response. We're awaiting that. We are just going to parse that as text, and that is ultimately what we return here, right? So that is the flow of things here. So let's actually spin up that n8n instance. So I can do that with npx n8n. I will just do that here in a separate terminal window. All right, so after a few seconds, n8n is running, and by default, it's running on port 5678. So if we open that up, so if it's your first time doing this, you will see a different screen. You will see something about signing up with a new account, basically your admin account. So I've already done that. So for me, it's just going to ask to sign in. All right, so then once you're in, you will see an overview of your workflows. If it's the first time, you're not going to see anything, but I have created one workflow here. This is what you do in n8n. You create these workflows. So if I click on that, you will see the editor view here. And this is basically where you connect a bunch of nodes. So here you compose your workflows, and this can get really sophisticated. Actually, n8n recently also released their AI agent node. You can get very advanced with this actually, which is why I think it could be a really good fit for your applications. Now in this case, in my workflow here, I picked the Webhook node. So you can find all the nodes here. So there's also a bunch of options here for AI and data transformation. However, in this case, I picked the Webhook flow. This is basically the trigger of the workflow. So typically you will need to have some node that will trigger the entire workflow. In this case, it's going to happen when there's an incoming request to the n8n instance. So you can just sort of drag and drop it here and it will open up the settings for that particular node. I'm gonna go back to canvas here or press escape and I will actually delete this. Let's actually open up this node here so you can see what I did here. So it looks a bit overwhelming here, but there are just a few settings that I set here. So production URL, I made the URL to sort of where I'm going to send the CSV file to. I made it this. So /webhook /CSV to JSON. I changed it into a post HTTP method. And actually here's the path. So that will influence that. And then here responding. So my Next.js app, if we take a look here from our own Next.js API endpoint, we are making a fetch call. Let's see where I did this. Yeah. So here I'm making that fetch call to n8n, right? And we are awaiting a response. So here we decide when we want to respond. So here I just want to respond when the last node finishes. So we're basically waiting until the result is complete before returning the result. I believe it's also possible to return an execution ID. So in that case, if you have a longer running workflow, let's say, and you can immediately respond back with an execution ID and then you can pull for any updates. So if you have more like an asynchronous background job type of workflow, that may be of interest. However, here I'm just doing it synchronously. Response data, I'm making this all entries. And then here I added a option here for field name for binary data. I'm calling it simply file, okay? So those are the settings from my webhook node. Then I added another node here. And again, I found this by just going here. In this case, I added the extract from file node. This can convert binary data into JSON. So this fits in here. So you have to connect them. So you can see there's a line between them. And then if I double click on it, you can see there are some parameters here actually. So the operation that we want is actually extract from CSV. And then the input binary field needs to be the same name as what we just saw with file. And then actually I had to add a 0 behind it. I think n8n automatically adds 0, 1, 2, 3. So if there are maybe multiple files, it may give them a different number. But I had to add a 0 here to make it work. And then for options, I also had to enable header row here, okay? This is all that is necessary. And again, the response, we already specified it here for the webhook node. The response will be when that last node finishes. So when this is finished, it will return a response to our Next.js application. That's all that I'm doing here, right? So really simple. Of course, we can get much more sophisticated. There are all these options for these nodes. Also here AI agent, actually, I have another video on that about automating your own blog actually. So really powerful. And yeah, it's just really good. So now I also need to save this, right? So if you make any changes, you need to save. And then I'm also making it active so I can actually use it in my Next.js applications. So now if I go to my Next.js application here, I have selected a CSV file from my file system. Now if I click on upload, let's see what we get. And here I get my result and all of that work was done here in n8n. So now if I go back to the n8n instance, there's also a tab here for executions. So if we go there, you can see there was a successful execution here and it even shows you the nodes that were triggered and you can also view a lot of other things here. But I was able to get this result without coding myself. So I think this is pretty neat and this may be useful for you. So about the URL, by the way, so the URL that I was using here, I put that in an environment variable because this will change whether it's depending on whether we're in development or production. So here in this case, the n8n webhook URL going to be what we specified for that webhook node. And n8n is running on port 5678. So locally, it's going to be this URL. Now you can also run n8n here hosted. So they have an option for this as well. So you can see here they have a cloud offering here as well. So maybe you want to do it that way. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Now, this is all locally, but I think it gets even better because these days we can self-host Next.js and n8n very easily, actually. So this is running all locally. So my Next.js app is here on localhost as well as the n8n instance here. So now let's actually talk about how we can make this work in production. So we're actually going to try to make it work on a VPS. Now, we're going to use Coolify for this actually. I've shown how to use Coolify before with a Next.js application. However, in this case, I want to show you how we can combine that with n8n. And we can manage all of that by just using the Coolify dashboard actually. We can deploy Next.js as well as n8n. So that's really nice. So I'm going to use a VPS and I will use Hostinger for that in this video. They are also today's sponsor. I've had a great time working with them so far and they have some really powerful options here for VPS. So as of recording, these are the options that you see. I will go with the KVM2 plan here. But if you already anticipate that you're going to need more resources, feel free to pick one of these other options here. So if you pick a plan, if we go here, you will also be able to fill out a coupon code. So here you can click on have a coupon code, and then you can fill out mine, ByteGrad, all uppercase, so you can get an even better price. So make sure to check out the link in the description and make sure to use the coupon code in case you want to sign up for a VPS here at Hostinger. One of the reasons for picking Hostinger is that they already have a Coolify VPS template out of the box. So they already know what we're doing. Coolify is already integrated to a certain degree here in Hostinger. I think that's a major plus for Hostinger. So then here, you can pick how long you want and you can pick the server location. I will just leave the default. Now here, the nice thing is we can pick Coolify here out of the box. Also n8n, we're going to manage it with Coolify. So the only thing we need here is actually Coolify. So I'm going to click on Coolify here. So the VPS will actually just run Ubuntu and it comes pre-installed with Coolify in that case. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and go through the checkout here. All right, and after buying, you will see the setup flow like this. So here we can pick a password for logging into our VPS. We actually won't need it, but just make sure that you pick one that you will remember. All right, so I will press next here. They offer to add a malware scanner, and now it's going to set up my VPS. This may take a few minutes, so I will see you when it's finished. All right, and after a few minutes, we will see this. Now we can manage our VPS here in the Hostinger dashboard. So here we have all of the settings for the VPS, but in our case, we're going to use Coolify, so we don't need to do much here, luckily. We just have to open up the panel here. Now, the first time you're going to see this, it's going to ask you to create an account. Make sure you are the first one here because it's going to be a root user. So I will just quickly fill this out and register here. All right, so now we are in Coolify here. We will get started and it provides you here with a sign up flow. Now we're just going to host everything here on localhost, meaning just this one VPS, and it's organized in projects. So in this case, we're going to create one project in which we will have a Next.js app as well as the n8n instance. So here we need to create resources. So the Next.js app is one resource, the n8n instance is one resource, so we will go there. All right, so here we can now set up a resource. So we will do the Next.js app here with a private repository on GitHub in a second, but let's actually start with n8n. Now I will have a separate video on setting up n8n with Coolify on a Hostinger VPS as well, so make sure to check out that video. However, here I will quickly go through it. So there are two options here. n8n, basically by default, I believe it's using SQLite as a database, but you can also have n8n with Postgres. So let's actually try that. Okay, so here it will show you what it's going to do and we can just click on deploy. So it's going to set up n8n on our VPS. Okay, so after a few seconds, if we actually check out the logs here and we will see something like editor is now accessible via this URL. So Coolify by default will create some URLs for the things you set up. So it will use some slip.io. If I go there right now, you will get a warning like this. So we do not see the n8n dashboard here because it needs to be, because it's expecting like a secure cookie. Now, actually, I couldn't find much information about it. So it's a little bit unclear for me what exactly happens if we disable the security feature, which they say is not recommended. So what you could do is you could set the environment variable to false. So if we take a look at environment variables here, we can go to configuration, environment variables. I can do developer view here. If I scroll down, so I don't see the environment variable here. I assume that we can simply add a new environment variable here and set it to false, or go to config, edit compose file, but I'm not exactly sure what kind of problems we may invite with that. So the other way I got it to work was to actually use my own domain. So I actually have a domain here registered with Hostinger. So I have this bytegradcourses.com domain here, and I can use DNS here to set up, for example, a subdomain for n8n. So what I can do here is I can create an alias for n8n. This will be the subdomain, and I'm going to point this simply at my VPS. So that's this IP address that we got from Hostinger. So I'm just going to paste that right here without HTTP. I'm going to add the record here. Okay, DNS record created successfully. Now I can go to the n8n dashboard. Now I can go to Coolify dashboard here, and here I can edit this URL. So in this case, what I want is HTTPS. It should be n8n.bytegradcourses.com. Now they recommend if a service has a defined port to not delete it. So I assume that with n8n, I should leave the 5678 port. And I also assume that I can just add HTTPS here instead of just plain HTTP. But let's actually save this and try this out. So I do need to restart the service here. So if I close out of here and restart, let's see what happens. Okay, so that looks good. If I go to logs here and I click on stream logs, let's see what we get. So if I scroll down, editor is now accessible with that URL. So now I have n8n as a subdomain here on my domain. So if I go there, we actually see the dashboard. So that's really nice. Now, actually, I got a really strange issue in Chrome. I'm actually not sure what's going on, but there may be some caching. So if you've already been trying it out, you can actually just try going to this URL in a different browser like Safari or some other browser, or simply open up a new window here in Chrome and just try going there again. I had a major issue where I kept seeing that security warning screen for a long time, but then I simply tried it in a new browser window and it actually worked. So maybe there's some caching, I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, the first thing we do here is set up an owner account, so make sure you're also the first one seeing this. Now we can go in here. All right, so now we are in a brand new n8n instance. I will just get started here and we skip this. So now we can create a workflow. Now we don't have to do it completely from scratch. If we do start from scratch here, you will see an empty editor. So you may think, oh, now I have to completely redo everything. Well, no, actually, if you've already been doing it locally, we can go ahead here and I can click on download actually. So if I click on download, it will download a JSON file basically representing the nodes here, the whole workflow. And then I can import that here on that instance here. So here I can then go import from file, and then you need to pick that file from your file system. And then you can see I have my workflow here on that instance that I have on my VPS. If I double click on this to see the settings, you can see that all the settings here are the same except for the URL here. So here in this case, of course, the URL for the webhook that my Next.js app needs to call needs to be this different domain. Let's keep that in memory. And then here we have the other node. You can see all the settings here are the same. So now n8n, we have the workflow, but you also have to save here and also activate the workflow if you want to make it work like that. So I'm going to activate it here on the VPS as well. Okay, so now n8n on our VPS should be good to go. Now we need to make sure we also have our Next.js app on the VPS. Now I have a dedicated video on how to set up Next.js with Coolify. So I will go through it pretty quickly here. So we have our project. Right, so project, and we have one service now. Now we're going to add another resource, right? So these resources are just n8n, for example, is a resource, and our Next.js app is also going to be a resource. Now it's going to be from a private repo, so we're going to push our app here to GitHub in a second. And actually, let's do that right now. So here on GitHub, I will say n8n Next.js. I will make it a private repo, and I will create the repo like this. Okay, so now I will copy all of this. All right, so I'll actually commit and push everything to our repository here on GitHub. So now if I refresh here, we have the Next.js application here on GitHub. Now I can add a GitHub app here. So it needs to do it with a GitHub app. So the first thing we're going to do here is actually set up the GitHub app itself. So it may look a bit confusing, but we just have to register this. All right, so here I can create a GitHub app. I need to install repositories on GitHub. So I need to pick the repositories that app can access. I like to be a little bit selective here. So I will pick the repo that we just created and I will just install that. All right, so I will save this here. So now we have the GitHub app. Now we can actually pull that onto our VPS. So I will go to our project here. One more time, click on new resource. Now it's going to be a private repository. And which source? Well, we could have multiple GitHub apps, but in this case, this particular one. And we're going to load that one repository that it has access to. And I will click on continue here. Okay, so now we have the overview here. We're just going to go ahead and click on deploy. So now it's going to actually try to pull that app that we have onto the VPS, and it will actually try to run it as well. So we should be able to access it when this is finished. But again, I have a complete video on deploying Next.js with Coolify as well. So if you want more in-depth information about that, check out that video. All right, now you can also click on show debug logs. So maybe it's not working for you and there's a problem. It may actually show up in the logs here. So in particular, the Next.js build itself may fail. It could be, for example, because one of your types in your Next.js application isn't set properly. So the build by default with create next app will actually fail in that case. So if something is not working, you may want to check the debug logs. Typically, it will show you the reason for why it didn't work. However, for me, it seems to look good here. So now you can see it's running. And now if we actually want to see the app, well, there are links here. So here you can see there is a link. If I click on that, we see our Next.js application hosted on that VPS by Hostinger. And we have this URL here. So let's quickly change it into the actual domain that we want to use. So I can go to my DNS. In this case, it's going to be an A record for the root here. Right. It is going to be for the same IP address. So let's add that here as well. It's going to show me this overview. We'll say confirm. Now I need to go back to my Coolify dashboard here, click on configuration, and here I have domain. So I'm actually just going to use HTTPS ByteGrad ByteGradCourses.com, and I need to press enter here. So otherwise it will not set the domain. So pay attention to that. And then I do need to redeploy here. So let's quickly do that as well. And again, I can show the debug logs here in case the build is failing or it's not working, it's not showing up. Make sure to check out these logs. Now there is one thing we should add here, by the way, which is the environment variable here. So for this Next.js application, if we go to add an environment variable, so locally we used a particular URL that our Next.js app was using to make a request to. This was the webhook URL of n8n, so it was running locally. However, now if we copy this and the value here, it's going to be HTTPS, and in this case it's going to be that subdomain, right? So n8n dot, well, in my case, ByteGradCourses.com. I believe I don't need the port for that. I can just leave it like this, and the name of the environment variable is still going to be this. So I will paste this right here. So I will save this, and now that should be set here as well. So I believe that the deployment may actually fail if you did not set the environment variable. So let me also redeploy this. Okay, so it shows that the deployment is finished. Now let's actually check this out. Let's go to the homepage here. So it may not immediately show up for HTTPS here. May take a few minutes, but let's continue here. So let's actually try uploading a CSV file. So I just picked a CSV file from my computer, and let's actually try uploading this and see what we get. All right, and here I get a result. I get the CSV data, but now in JSON format. So this has been passed off to n8n. So if we go to n8n here on my VPS, if I go to executions, you can see that there was one execution here. So that all worked now. And I'm just amazed at how easy it is these days to set up a pretty sophisticated setup here. I would say Next.js, you know, it's a full stack framework, but now including n8n, which just opens up a lot of sophisticated workflows. Make sure to check out Hostinger. You can find a link in the description. They have a great VPS. I had a great time using them so far, including with Coolify and also with Next.js and n8n. And in any case, I hope this was helpful to you. Hopefully you can find some use of this. And I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a nice day. Bye.